We're looking at here a really horrific graph because it shows us the end of the Western monetary system and obviously the end of the dollar as well as other Western currencies. This started really in 1913 with the creation of the Fed, so-called central bank, owned by private bankers for the benefit of private bankers. And this is how the Fed has been managed, and we can see the consequences. Until 1971, there was some discipline and the debt grew gradually from $3 billion in 1930 to, in 1970, $370 billion. But, of course, since Nixon closed the gold window, we have seen an absolute explosion of US debt and, of course, of global debt also. So from 1970, we've gone today to $38 trillion. That is just an astronomical figure that the US cannot afford and the world cannot afford. And the only way to repay that debt is by issuing more debt. But even the interest costs are too high to cover. We are today looking at $1 trillion interest rate. $1 trillion. So this is in Hemingway's famous words, how do you go bankrupt? First gradually and then suddenly. And we're in the sudden phase here. Look at what's going to happen in the next few years. Debt has doubled every 8-9 years since 1913. And just extrapolating that, we're seeing at least 100 trillion debt in 2036. 100 trillion debt from 3 billion in 1913. That's a 3 million% increase. Very, very difficult to fathom. And of course, by that time, the US and the whole of Western financial system will be bankrupt, totally. But they will continue to print money until it is totally worthless. The dollar and all currencies are down already by 99% since 1971. And that final percent will lead to total disaster and collapse of the Western financial system. At the same time as we have such an enormous and catastrophic rise of debt, obviously that will also lead to high inflation. And I expect interest rates to be at least 10% by that time. I think it'll be 10% long before that, actually. The interest rate trend turned up in 2021 after a 40-year downtrend and is now going up for at least 20 to 40 years. And therefore, we are going to see much higher interest rates, probably as high as in the 1970s, which I remember well. So 10% is probably a modest rate to calculate on the debt in 2036, which is the forecast when we will reach 100 trillion. So 10%, probably much lower than it will be. 10% means 10 trillion interest rate cost by that time. So what are the consequences except for collapse of financial system? Well, that's enough for anyone to actually deal with or fathom. But of course, it will also mean people will suffer, people will be poor, people will lose a lot of money, the investors will lose massive amounts of money. We are already seeing now signs that the stock markets are turning, and I think we're not far away from a rapid decline in stock markets. And that includes also tech stocks. Companies like Nvidia or Palantir looks like they're going to crash. And in my view, and that's probably more controversial, I also think that Bitcoin and many of the cryptocurrencies will go down with the tech stocks. That's what it looks like. And we're already seeing the start of that. Of course, it will also lead to a shock in a highly leveraged system of tech stocks, of cryptocurrencies, and of course of debt in general. The consequences will be real. There will be social unrest, there will be war, there will be poverty, and it's going to be a very tough time. And of course, it's more important than ever to help family, to help friends, help the people around you. And of course, to whatever extent you can, try to preserve wealth. So buy gold, buy physical silver, and store it outside the banking system. Now, with the background picture that I have painted, with the collapse of the currency, that means that it will be reflected in the gold price. And the gold price is the reverse of these crashing markets and crashing currencies. So I would expect to see both gold and silver going up by multiples in the next few years. And especially silver is extremely undervalued and will go up maybe twice as fast as gold. So please, please preserve your wealth. Help your friends and family, buy gold and silver, and then be very careful with your money for the coming years. Thank you.